Take the mule, the gambler sneered. The cowboy lifted the girl instead. Dust hung like old lace over the street. Noonlight hammered the boardwalk. A piano stumbled in the saloon and then quit. He had shod the gambler's roan that morning, hammer ringing in the small forge by the creek. Payment was promised. Coins, he'd said. But when the man lost them at cards, he staggered out and shoved a thin figure forward. A girl, wrists tied with rawhide, eyes steady, cheek marked with ash. The street turned to watch as dusty town streets do. The cowboy did not speak. He cut the rawhide with his knife. He put his coat over her shoulders. He nodded once, as if accepting a bill of sale that had never been written. The gambler laughed and spat. Debts settled. The piano tried again. She stood taller under the coat. She did not cry. She touched her left wrist and hid the motion almost. A small bracelet gleamed there. Bone carved with a thunderbird no wider than a thumb. He saw it and said nothing. The gambler tried to turn away, but the cowboy caught his sleeve, easy as catching a bridle. He guided the man toward the sheriff's office, boots thumping slow on old planks. The sheriff saw them from the doorway and frowned. Heat rose from the street. Flies hummed like a bad choir. "This isn't coin," the sheriff said. The cowboy set a folded paper on the desk. The work order for the horseshoes, his name at the bottom. Plain letters. He tapped the line that said, "Paid upon pickup." The gambler swore. The sheriff lifted one brow. The girl stood at the window, watching the wind comb the frontier grass beyond the last corral. When the sheriff asked her name, she looked at the thunderbird and then at the sky. Her mouth stayed shut. Pride can be quiet and still fill a room. "Sit," the cowboy said, his first word, and set a tin cup of water on the table. He did not ask questions. He warmed a biscuit on the small stove and broke it in half. She ate slow. The sheriff scratched a note in his ledger. The gambler grinned again, the grin of a man who thinks a town will look away if the light is bright enough. But even bright light shows the damage in wood. Outside, a wagon rattled by, iron singing on stone. The smell of horse and wood smoke drifted in. The sheriff told the gambler he might have a cell for him if he kept talking. Then he turned to the cowboy. "You taking charge, then?" The cowboy's jaw worked once. He wasn't a rancher with a spread, only a man with strong hands and a forge. But he nodded. The sheriff looked at the girl. "Until we sort this," he said. She lifted her chin. The thunderbird flashed and went still. They left the office by the side door to avoid the eyes. The wind had teeth out back. He led her along the alley, past stacked barrels, past a cat asleep in the shade, to the small blacksmith shed. Inside, the air changed. It smelled of iron and sweat and ash. Safe places sometimes smell like work. He set a stool near the anvil and laid a folded horse blanket on it. She sat and studied the tongs, the rasp, the neat line of horseshoe nails. She touched none of it. The forge was cold. He did not light it yet. The world was loud enough. "Hungry still?" he asked. She shook her head. The coat slid and he saw a faint bruise like a cloud's shadow. He looked away. He poured more water. Outside, the saloon piano found a brave tune. Then it broke. He rummaged in a wooden box and found a length of soft leather. He cut it into 2 strips. "For wrists," he said, holding them out. She looked at the thunderbird again. She hesitated. Then she slipped the bracelet into her palm, secret as prayer, and let him tie fresh bands over the tender skin, like a promise he could keep with his hands. She nodded once in thanks. A wind gust shoved the door and brought in a swirl of dust, then left them with quiet. He pointed to a small cot in the corner. "Sleep here," he said. "Door stays open." She lay down without removing her boots. He set a chair beside the doorway and took the first watch, eyes on the alley, ears on the town. The sun slid off the roofs. Shadows lengthened like spilled ink. Somewhere, a coyote called the day to order. The thunderbird bracelet winked once from her folded fingers and vanished. "Let truth be seen," not shouted. "Don't trust me," she whispered. He hadn't asked her to. Morning light spilled through the forge's cracks, painting dust like gold smoke. The cowboy fed the coals, hammering out a horseshoe just to keep the rhythm steady. The Apache girl sat near the doorway, wrapped in his old coat. Her eyes followed each swing of the hammer, each hiss of iron and water. She hadn't spoken much since the night before. When she did, her voice carried both caution and grace, like someone raised to weigh every word. He nodded toward the bucket. "Drink before it's warm," she obeyed, silent. A thin trail of steam rose from the forge. The smell of metal and oak filled the small shed. By mid-morning, a boy from the saloon brought bread and word. The gambler had ridden out before dawn, heading toward the ridge. The sheriff told the cowboy to keep the girl safe until she could be sent east, to one of them missions. The cowboy said nothing, just kept shaping the iron. The girl's eyes narrowed when she heard mission. Her fingers tightened around the Thunderbird bracelet. He noticed. That means something? She looked up. It means I belong to no man. Then she tucked it back under the sleeve. Outside, the frontier stretched endless. Sagebrush trembled in the wind. The town's rhythm returned. Boots, laughter, the sharp bark of a dog. The world had already forgotten what happened at the saloon. But not him. By evening, she helped him sweep the forge. He showed her how to sort nails by size, how to tell a good horseshoe from a cracked one. She learned quick, too quick for someone who claimed she'd never seen a forge before. Her hands moved like memory. You worked iron before, he said. Her eyes flickered. My father taught me. He said fire tells truth. The cowboy stopped mid-swing. Your father? Was he a smith? Her jaw tightened. He was a chief. The white men called him something else. He didn't press. Instead, he reached for a tin plate and split what bread they had left. The firelight danced between them. Two lives stitched by debt and silence. When night came, the wind changed. It carried the smell of rain and something older. Wood smoke mixed with faraway drums. The girl sat by the open door looking west. Her eyes shimmered. They're calling, she said softly. The mountain people. They'll come. He didn't answer, but he moved the rifle from the wall to his lap. Later, when the fire burned low, he found her bracelet lying near the cot. The Thunderbird carving glowed faintly, edges worn smooth by time. On its underside, hidden in the bone, was a mark, not of a traitor, but of a tribe. He rubbed it between his fingers and felt the weight of it. This was no slave trinket. It was lineage. At dawn, he left a note by the sheriff's porch. The girl ain't what she seems. Keep the peace quiet till I return. He saddled his horse and led her west, following the red cut of the trail into the hills. She didn't ask where they were going, only looked at the sky and whispered, You'll see who you saved. As they rode, a storm brewed far over the ridge, the kind that turned dirt roads to rivers, the kind that washed away lies. Let mercy ride farther than pride. Turn back now, she warned. He nudged the horse forward instead. The sky above the ridge was the color of iron. Clouds pressed low, dragging shadows across the hills. The trail wound through dry ravines where the wind whispered through sage and brittle weeds. The cowboy kept one hand near the reins, the other near the rifle. The Apache girl rode behind him, quiet but alert. She had the kind of silence that felt learned, not given. They stopped by a shallow stream where cottonwoods bent under the coming storm. She slid off the horse and knelt by the water, cupping it gently, whispering words he couldn't understand. When she finished, she touched her wrist, where the Thunderbird bracelet had been. He handed it back to her, the small carving still warm from his palm. She slipped it on again and looked at him with something between gratitude and warning. You shouldn't have taken me, she said softly. Wasn't right what he did. Many things aren't right, she replied. But men forget faster than fire cools. He had no answer. The storm broke a moment later. Rain slashed sideways, thunder rolling like drums across the ridge. They found shelter beneath an old shack, half buried in dirt and memory. Inside it smelled of pine and horses long gone. He built a small fire in a rusted stove. She sat near it, eyes reflecting the flame. Through the gaps in the wall, he saw lights flicker far off, torches moving along the ridge line. The girl noticed too. Her lips parted, not in fear but recognition. They're looking for me, she said. Your people? She nodded slowly. Or the ones who want me dead. I can't tell anymore. The cowboy checked his rifle, then looked at her. Why'd the gambler have you? Her gaze dropped. He didn't win me. He stole me. My father sent me to speak with the settlers, to trade horses for peace. The gambler came first. Her voice broke slightly, then steadied. He wanted gold for proof of loyalty. He said he'd sell me to the army next. The cowboy's jaw tightened. The wind outside screamed through the cracks. And your father? She looked toward the mountains. He'll come, but not for revenge. For truth. Lightning flashed. showing her face for what it was, proud, unbroken, framed by rain and firelight. The cowboy realized then that she wasn't the one in danger. The town was. They waited through the night. At dawn, the rain stopped, leaving the land washed clean, silver and still. From the ridge came riders, 5 of them, cloaked in dust, spears upright, feathers trailing. The girl stood at the doorway, lifting her hand high. The riders halted. One dismounted, an older man with eyes that carried centuries. "Father," she whispered. The cowboy stepped back, lowering his rifle. The man's gaze moved to him, slow, measuring. No threat, no fear, only the quiet between men who've both lost too much. "She's safe," the cowboy said simply. "Owes me nothing." The chief stepped forward, holding out a carved piece of antler shaped like a crescent moon. "For your truth," he said in careful English. "And for your silence." The cowboy shook his head. "Not for sale." The girl smiled faintly then, her first real smile. "You'll understand soon," she said. "The white town thinks I'm gone. Let them. But truth travels faster than horses." Her father turned his eyes toward the horizon. "The sheriff will come. You should be ready." The riders melted into the mist as if the earth had swallowed them. Only their hoofbeats lingered, fading into the hush. The cowboy looked down at the bracelet again. The Thunderbird seemed to gleam brighter now. Its wings stretched wider in the dawn. He knew the quiet wouldn't last. Let courage be still, even when the storm speaks. "Ride away while you can," the sheriff said. But the cowboy stayed. By noon, the town was restless again. Rain had turned the main street into streaks of mud and gold dust, and gossip moved faster than any horse. Someone had seen Apache riders near the ridge. Someone else swore the gambler was back, and this time he had the army behind him. The cowboy wiped the forge table clean, setting tools in neat rows. The girl sat on the cot, quiet but watching the street through a slit in the boards. Her Thunderbird bracelet caught a line of sunlight. "They'll come here first," she said softly. He nodded. "Let them." Not far off, the sheriff's boots echoed on the planks. He stopped in the doorway, rain dripping from his hat brim. His face was drawn, not from fear, but from knowing too much. "They say you're hiding one of them," he said. "Say what they want," the cowboy answered. The sheriff looked past him to the girl. "That true?" She didn't flinch. "I was taken from my people. This man returned me my name." Her voice was steady, almost royal. The sheriff shifted his weight, uneasy. "They'll call it aiding an enemy," he muttered. "She's no enemy," the cowboy said. "She's the chief's daughter. And that gambler, he's the one who started all this." The sheriff's eyes widened, then narrowed again. "You sure of that?" "She told me. Her tribe will vouch for it. If they live long enough." Thunder cracked far off. The sound rolled through town like cannon fire. The sheriff spat in the mud. "I'll stall the soldiers. But if that gambler rides in with papers, you're on your own." He turned to leave, but hesitated. "One thing," he said quietly. "What's she wearing on her wrist?" The cowboy looked at the bracelet. "A Thunderbird." The sheriff nodded. "That mark carries weight. It means Oathkeeper. If her father sent her, he meant peace. Don't let fools turn it into war." When he left, the girl exhaled, shoulders trembling for the first time. "He's right," she said. "They won't understand. To them, Apache means outlaw." The cowboy stirred the coals again. "Then we teach them different." Before sunset, hooves thundered up the street. The gambler was back, coat flapping, eyes red from whiskey and rage. Behind him rode 2 soldiers and a man in an officer's cap. They stopped at the forge door. "That the girl?" The officer barked. "Orders say she's property, bought for a debt." The cowboy didn't move. "Not anymore," the gambler sneered. "She's Apache trash. The chief will pay good to get her back or dead." The girl stepped forward, chin high. "You stole peace for gold," she said. "Now you'll answer for it." The officer laughed. "Savages don't give orders here." He reached for her arm. The cowboy caught his wrist halfway. Silence cracked sharper than thunder. The officer froze, staring into eyes that had seen too many graves. "You really want to die for her?" He hissed. "Not die," the cowboy said. "Just do what's right." The gambler drew his gun first, but fear makes bad aim. The cowboy's shot came second and true. The gambler dropped to the mud, gun spinning from his hand, face half in the puddle. The soldier stepped back, stunned. The sheriff appeared at the corner, rifle raised. "Enough," he shouted. "This ends lawful." He pointed to the gambler's pocket. "Check his papers." The officer hesitated, then pulled them out. Forged, all of them. False seals. False debts. The sheriff looked at the cowboy and nodded once. "You just bought justice, friend." With truth, the girl stepped closer, touching the Thunderbird bracelet. The symbol glowed faintly in the dying light. "My father will come," she said. "Now he'll come in peace." The sheriff holstered his gun. "Then let's make sure this town lives long enough to greet him." The wind carried the sound of drums again, not of war this time, but of homecoming. Let mercy walk before judgment, even on muddy streets. "Don't thank me yet," he said quietly. Justice wasn't done, only begun. The storm had passed, but the town wore its aftermath like a bruise. Rain left the streets dark and glistening, reflecting lantern light and the shapes of men who whispered too loud. Word spread that the gambler was dead. Some called it murder. Others called it mercy. The sheriff posted guards at the saloon, though no one drank much that night. He ordered the gambler's papers sealed and delivered to the courthouse in the next county. The cowboy and the girl stayed by the forge, silent, waiting for what morning might bring. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of coal and smoke. The girl sat near the anvil, hands folded around the Thunderbird bracelet. "He won't rest," she said softly. "Men like him never do. Even in death, they stir hate." The cowboy nodded. "Then we'll outlast it." At sunrise, riders appeared again, blue coats, dust-caked, eyes sharp, soldiers. They dismounted and read the sheriff's order aloud, accusing the cowboy of unlawful killing and harboring a fugitive native. The sheriff tried to intervene, but orders outranked reason. They shackled the cowboy's hands and led him toward the jailhouse. The girl followed, pleading in both English and her native tongue. "He saved me. He is not the enemy." But her words were drowned in the clatter of boots and chains. Inside the small jail, he sat against the wall, wrists marked by iron. Through the bars, he could see her pacing in the yard, rain dripping from her hair. The sheriff leaned against the doorway, jaw tight. "They're sending a judge from Fort Tyler," he said. "Won't take long." "Doesn't matter," the cowboy said. "Truth don't move fast anyway," the sheriff sighed. "She told me who her father is. That bracelet she wears, it's the chief's mark. You're caught between two laws now, friend. The white man's and the wind's." Night came slow. Thunder rolled again beyond the plains. The girl slipped through the darkness with something small in her hand, the Thunderbird bracelet. She pressed it through the bars. "Keep it," she whispered. "It will speak for you when I can't." He tried to hand it back, but she closed his fingers around it. "You gave me my freedom. Let this give you yours." Then she vanished into the rain. By morning, the judge arrived, a stern man with ink-stained fingers and a mind for numbers more than hearts. He heard the soldier's version first, a gunfight, a dead gambler, a stolen girl. Then he called for witnesses. The sheriff stepped forward. "He didn't steal her," he said. "He kept her alive. The gambler forged army papers to sell her." The judge frowned. "And your proof?" Before anyone could answer, the door opened. A shadow filled the frame. Tall, broad, wrapped in a blanket patterned with storm colors. The Apache chief stepped inside, silent but commanding. Gasps rippled through the room. Behind him came two riders bearing wooden boxes and one folded banner. The chief spoke in slow English. "My daughter was taken. This man returned her with honor. We bring what was stolen. Proof of treaty, signed by your general and my hand." He laid the parchment on the table, edges charred from travel. The judge examined it, face paling. The seal was real. The gambler's greed had nearly broken a fragile piece. The cowboy lifted the Thunderbird bracelet and placed it on the table beside the parchment. "Truth has a mark," he said. The judge swallowed, then turned to the soldiers. "Release him," the sheriff smiled faintly. The girl stepped forward, eyes bright with relief. Her father placed a hand on the cowboy's shoulder. "You kept your word," he said. "In my tribe, that makes you kin." The cowboy didn't answer, but his eyes softened. The Thunderbird gleamed once more, wings outstretched, no longer a chain, but a bond. Let honor be its own reward, even when no one's watching. "Peace isn't quiet," she said softly. "It just stops needing to shout." The sun rose over the ridge like a slow promise. Mist curled around the cottonwoods, and the forge breathed smoke again. The cowboy stood outside, sleeves rolled, hammering a horseshoe back into shape. The rhythm was steady, like a heartbeat finding its calm. Across the yard, the Apache girl, now dressed in her tribe's woven shawl, spoke with her father near the corral. The sheriff leaned against a post, hat low, pretending not to listen. The town had changed overnight. No gunfire, no whispers, just work. The judge left before dawn, the treaty locked in his saddlebags, bound for the fort. The gambler's name would fade from ledgers soon enough, and the soldiers who'd come for blood had left in silence, heads bowed to the truth. The chief turned toward the cowboy. "You could come with us," he said. "There's land enough in the valley and hands needed for building." The cowboy set the hammer down, shaking his head. "My place is here. I owe this town a steady hand." The chief studied him a long moment, then smiled. "Then may your fire never go cold." The girl walked over, the morning light turning her hair to bronze. In her palm was something small, a new carving, shaped from the same bone as her old bracelet. A thunderbird again, wings wider, tail fanned like a sunrise. "You fixed the old one," he said. She nodded. "It broke the night they took you. I carved this one stronger." He took it gently, tracing the fine lines with a calloused thumb. "You keep it." "It's yours." She shook her head. "No, it's for your forge, so you remember fire can protect as well as destroy." He tied it to a leather cord and hung it above the forge, where sunlight touched it through the cracks in the roof. It swung slowly, the bird's shadow gliding across the walls like a silent guardian. The sheriff stepped closer, clearing his throat. "You know," he said, "most folks think peace comes from talk. But it's men like you, and her, who give it shape." The cowboy didn't reply, just fed the fire another piece of coal. The heat shimmered, glowing gold and red. The girl looked back once as she climbed onto her horse beside her father. "Will I see you again?" He tipped his hat. "If the wind ever brings you this way," she smiled. "Then it will." They rode out slow, the sound of hooves fading down the dusty trail. The cowboy stood there a long while watching the dust settle, until all that was left was the echo of drums from far-off hills, steady, peaceful, alive. When he finally turned back to the forge, the thunderbird carving caught the morning sun and burned like it was made of light. He smiled faintly, stoked the fire, and said under his breath, "Let truth be seen," not shouted. The wind carried the words beyond the door, across the quiet town, past the ridge where the world began again.